There were so many great games from the first weekend of college football, and with so many great games, there were a lot of great performances. Today, we're going to be looking at the top 10 performances from the first weekend of college football. Before we get to today's video, make sure to hit that subscribe button and turn on those notifications if you're new to the channel. If you love college football content like this, then this is definitely the place for you. Also, drop a comment down below and let me know who you thought had the best game this week. It helps the algorithm of the video and helps share the video with more college football fans. Plus, I'd love to see which player you thought was the best. If there are any other college football videos you'd like to see similar to this, comment below and that variable could turn into my next video. Before we get to the top 10, I'd like to share some honorable mentions of some players who just missed the cut. The first honorable mention might come as a surprise considering he was named the Offensive Player of the Week, but I have Bijan Robinson outside of my top 10. His 2021 debut was great, as he rushed for 100 yards with a touchdown and added 4 catches for 70 yards and a touchdown as well. Jack Coan had a solid debut for Notre Dame, as he threw for over 360 yards with 4 touchdowns on the road at Florida State. I've given Jack Coan my fair share of criticism over the last few years, but he looked pretty good for the Irish. Although he's only 5'7", North Texas running back DeAndre Torrey dominated Northwestern State, as he rushed for nearly 250 yards with 3 touchdowns, averaging 10 yards a carry. Drake London had 39 catches in 2019 and 33 catches in 2020. Well, this weekend for USC, he had 12 catches, as he added 140 yards in the receiving game as well. Will Levis probably wishes he could play UL Monroe every week, as he threw for 370 yards and 4 touchdowns on a very nice 69 completion percentage. He transferred from Penn State this offseason and looks like he'll be a nice addition for the Wildcats. Dorian Thompson-Robinson completed only 9 passes and threw the ball only 16 times, but he threw for 260 yards with 3 touchdowns in a win over LSU. Michael Pratt nearly pulled off the comeback and upset of the season for Tulane, as he threw for 300 yards with 3 touchdowns while adding 30 yards on the ground and a rushing touchdown. We gotta show some love for a defensive player on here, and Blaze Aldridge had quite the game for Missouri. He had 3.5 sacks and 6.5 tackles for loss. My final honorable mention will go to Zeb Nolan, who started quarterback for South Carolina. He threw for 120 yards and 4 touchdowns. But what makes it such a great performance is that he was supposed to be on South Carolina's coaching staff this season, but due to injuries, he ended up suiting up for the Gamecocks in week 1. This might end up being his only start this season, but the fact that someone who was supposed to be on the coaching staff threw 4 touchdowns in week 1 is just insane. Starting this list at number 10 is a player who essentially kept LSU in the game. Kayshon Boutte was pretty much the lone offense for the Tigers, as he had all 3 of their touchdowns. He finished the game with 9 catches for 150 yards and 3 touchdowns. LSU as a whole only had 330 total yards, so he nearly had half the production himself. His first touchdown of the game put LSU on the board and gave them the early lead. He then had a 44-yard touchdown in the third quarter, bringing LSU to within 4 points. He capped off his night with a 45-yard touchdown reception, but by then, it was too late for the Tigers. But he still had a great game and is likely going to be the next great wide receiver to come out of LSU. Number 9 was a record performance from Duke running back Mateo Durant, who rushed for a school record 255 yards. The only problem though was that it wasn't enough, as Duke fell to Charlotte. He rushed for 255 yards on 29 carries, averaging 9 yards a run. He also had 3 rushing touchdowns and had 2 catches for 40 yards. He had 2 big plays in the game, as he rushed for a 59-yard touchdown and a 53-yard touchdown in the fourth quarter. Actually, most of his production nearly came in the fourth quarter, but again, it just wasn't enough for Duke to overcome the loss. Number 8 goes to Taulia Tagovailoa, who had one of his best games as a Terp. He completed 72% of his passes while throwing for 330 yards and 3 touchdowns in Maryland's win over West Virginia. His most impressive moment came though late in the game. With the Terps clinging to a 2-point lead, Maryland faced a critical 3rd and 5 at their own 40-yard line with just over 6 minutes remaining. Taulia completed a 60-yard touchdown pass to Raheem Jarrett, giving Maryland a 9-point lead. After West Virginia then cut the lead to 6 with a few minutes left, Taulia rushed for a first down on 3rd and 4, giving Maryland the victory. Coming in at number 7 is Desmond Ridder, who quietly did what he did all of last season. In Cincinnati's 35-point victory over Miami of Ohio, Ridder completed 20 of 25 passes for 300 yards and 4 touchdowns, while also adding 30 yards on the ground with a rushing touchdown. Within the first minute of the game, he completed an 80-yard touchdown pass. Ritter had games like this all of last season, so it wasn't surprising to see him kick off 2021 in this fashion. He's definitely a guy that's going to be on the Heisman radar all season long. Up next at number 6, we have a defensive player, and for good reason. Riley Moss had himself not one, but 2 pick sixes against Indiana. Every player dreams of having a pick 6 in their career, but he had 2 in just one game. His first pick 6 of the game came early on as he returned an interception for 30 yards and a touchdown just 2 minutes into the game. His next one came with 2 minutes left in the half, this one returning for 55 yards. In addition, he also added 2 pass breakups as well. I'm fairly certain that Michael Penix Jr. is glad to not face Iowa anymore this season. Before we get to the top 5, I'd like to share an honorable mention. Now, I already had this video edited, recorded, and ready to go, but I just saw an article that Fordham linebacker Ryan Greenhagen set an NCAA Division I record this past weekend with 31 total tackles against Nebraska. 31 tackles. Now, Fordham did lose by 45 points, but Greenhagen had 14 solo tackles and 17 assisted tackles. The former record was 30 that was accomplished multiple times over the last few decades. According to CBSSports.com, Greenhagen's 31 tackles are the most by any player against an FBS opponent since the NCAA began keeping records. So yeah, it was going to be too difficult to completely redo the entire video, so I wanted to get Greenhagen in as an honorable mention because regardless of who you're playing or who you play for, 31 tackles in a game is absolutely crazy. Bryce Young comes in at number 5 as he had a historic game for Alabama. He set a school record for passing touchdowns and yards in a debut as a starter in their 30-point win over Miami. He threw for 344 yards and 4 touchdowns and didn't throw an interception. He had a 94-yard touchdown pass, which tied him for the second longest touchdown pass in Alabama history. Although he's had some experience in games for Alabama, doing this in his first ever start against a top 15 team in the country is still remarkable. After his opening week performance, I think Bryce Young is the Heisman favorite. I know it's only been 1 week, but hey, it's got to be someone. Coming in at number 4 is Tanner Mordecai at SMU, who made his first career start for the team. After spending years as the backup quarterback for Oklahoma, Mordecai had quite the debut, and quite the first ever start. The last time he was a starting quarterback was in 2017 in his high school state championship game. That was over 1,300 days ago. He threw 7 touchdown passes, which is a school record. He threw for 317 yards and completed a pass to 11 different receivers. All 7 of his touchdowns came within the first 3 quarters. If SMU wasn't up by like 40 points, he likely could have added a few more touchdowns as well. Major props to Tanner Mordecai though for waiting his turn over the last few years and finally letting it fly in his debut. Surprisingly, that actually wasn't the best performance from a quarterback in week 1. Coming in at number 3 is Bailey Zappi, who also had quite the debut for his new team. After spending time at Houston Baptist and throwing for 10,000 yards, Zappi transferred to Western Kentucky this offseason. In his debut for his new team, he threw for 425 yards with 7 touchdowns. Just like with Mordecai, Zappi was done after the 3rd quarter. He amassed more yards passing in 13 throws than Western Kentucky averaged per game last season. He completed passes to 11 different receivers and 5 different receivers for touchdowns. Some really solid debuts from quarterbacks this week. Number 2 on our list goes to Michigan State running back Kenneth Walker. He transferred from Wake Forest this offseason, so this was quite the debut. He rushed for 264 yards on 23 carries and had 4 rushing touchdowns as he dismantled one of the top defenses in the entire country. It was the most rushing yards in a season opener in Michigan State history. Walker was also the first Big Ten running back to record 250 rushing yards and 4 touchdowns since Melvin Gordon in 2014. It was also the first time a Spartan running back has done that since 1971. He got the game started with a bang as he rushed for 75 yards for the touchdown on the first play. He got the game started with a bang as he rushed for a 75-yard touchdown on the first play of the game. I know that Walker wasn't named the Offensive Player of the Week somehow, so hopefully this recognition is more meaningful to him. Number 1 on this list goes to Florida State quarterback McKenzie Milton. He could have played only 1 snap, but he still would have been number 1 for me. Milton hasn't played college football since late 2018 after suffering a leg injury that almost led to his leg being amputated. There was a strong chance he wasn't ever going to be able to walk again, let alone ever play football again. Well, nearly 3 years later, he did what doctors thought was impossible and stepped back on the football field. He completed 5 of 7 passes for 50 yards and almost led Florida State to an amazing comeback. His story is incredible, and the fact that we saw McKenzie Milton on a football field is truly inspiring. For that reason, he was my performance of the week, and honestly, might be my performance of the year. Well, those were in my opinion the 10 best performances from the first weekend of the season. Drop a comment down below and let me know who you thought had the best game. Was there a player on here that I didn't include? Let me know in the comments down below. If you haven't done so yet, make sure you hit that subscribe button and turn on those notifications. I'm going to be posting college football videos all week, so if you're a college football fan, then this is definitely the place for you. If there are any other college football videos you'd like to see similar to this, comment down below and it could turn into my next video. As always, thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll see you all in my next video.